from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on AgDay, what if the U.S. withdraws from NAFTA?
This is not a tested area of U.S. law.
In AgriBusiness, a preview of USDA's latest report.
A lot of time with beans, you see USDA kick the can.
Keeping the planter on point with Farm Journal College TV, and growing your way to a better mood this winter.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. One day after Canada expressed fears over the future of NAFTA, it now appears there could be progress in one major sticking point: auto parts. During an earlier round of talks, U.S. negotiators demanded a higher percentage of North American auto parts be used in building cars, and half of the content should come from the U.S. Canada and Mexico balked at those demands, calling them impractical, and said it could sabotage talks. Now, Bloomberg is reporting that Canada and Mexico are both saying there is room for negotiations in the auto sector. Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland says her country will bring new ideas for unconventional U.S. proposals, but she was short on specifics. Trade relations between the U.S. and Canada were shaken this week when Canada filed a complaint unrelated to NAFTA with the World Trade Organization. Now, Canada is upset over American duties stemming from lumber exports from Canada. That action led to comments from Canadian officials expressing concern that President Trump will give notice of withdrawal from the pact. But withdrawal is not an easy process. The president would need to give 6 months' notice of the departure to Canada and Mexico. Plus, Congress could be a roadblock since the Constitution gives Congress the power to, quote, regulate commerce with foreign nations. And NAFTA supporters on the Hill could block the repeal of the law that implemented NAFTA.
But it is clear that the president can take steps to start that process without a vote of Congress. There is some debate as to whether the reimposition of tariffs or taking back of certain laws that were passed to implement NAFTA, whether that would require congressional approval or not. And as you noted in your question, I think you will see there's a lot of discussion in Washington about what that withdrawal process would look like, who can or who needs to be involved to make it happen, and it's murky.
The next round of talks began January 23rd in Montreal. Late Thursday, Arizona Senator Jeff Flake says a bipartisan group has reached a deal on immigration legislation. A spokesman for Illinois Senator Dick Durbin says talks are ongoing. Regardless, immigration and reform continues to be a major topic in Washington. Farm groups say a solution is needed to ensure a steady supply of workers. Now in California, growers and contractors recruited more than 14,000 foreign guest workers last year. That's according to LA Times analysis of data from the U.S. Department of Labor. The figure was up nearly 30% from the previous year.
It's extremely difficult. We've been trying to find an adequate labor supply for decades, and we've had to rely on the federal government through the H-2A program to find people who actually could come here legally. But that's not nearly enough to service the needs of production agriculture, especially in the fresh produce industry.
No word yet on if any immigration legislation will include changes to that H-2A program. Drought and dryness continues to expand across the Great Plains and Four Corners region of the country. The latest drought monitor showing now more than half of the country, 57%, is in some level of drought or dryness. The biggest changes happening in the southern plains, the states of Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, and Oklahoma. In Oklahoma, wheat pasture for cattle continues to feel the pinch of both dryness and cold weather. The crop went in with plenty of good expectations for the season. However,
for all the promise that we saw at the end of August, early September, really just hasn't happened that way. It's a series of challenges. We had armyworms early, so producers waited to plant, a lot of late planted wheat. By then it was dry, and it's continued to get drier. The wheat's stressed, and of course we've had a fair amount of cold weather recently, which has shut down the wheat. So we really don't have a lot of good wheat pasture out there right now.
Peel says in some cases root development was so poor that the wheat pasture was not grazed for fear of pulling it out of the ground. Mike Hoffman continuing our look at crop conditions. He has today's crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. Let's start off with a foggy morning at Seastock Farm in Scottsville, Virginia. Producer Paul Coleman says the weather was in the upper 20s and created a skim of ice and sleet earlier in the week. Temperatures are expected to linger in the 30s and 40s over the weekend. Over in Albany, Missouri, Jess Rolves sending us a picture of cattle having breakfast with a helping of wintry conditions. Despite the snow, the U.S. Drought Monitor shows almost all of the state is in a type of drought. Close to 99% is rated abnormally dry. 46% is classified as a moderate drought. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, you can see it's going to be very windy with that storm system moving through the Great Lakes and Mississippi Valley. That will continue to move eastward with the windiest conditions across Indiana and Ohio as we head through the end of today. Heading through tonight, then that'll all shift to the east, and by tomorrow morning, the windier conditions in the eastern Great Lakes and parts of the southeast, and that will spread eastward, but really by later tomorrow, not too much of the country sees high winds. And we'll take a look at your forecast coming up in a few moments, but first, here are some hometown temps.
1 dream, 2 prizes, 3 fields. Show us your farm and you could win a $10,000 donation for your community, plus a dream sports trip for you. To enter, visit powertodomore.com. Sponsored by Resicor Herbicide.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk markets and look at expectations for today's pending USDA report. And later, we continue the conversation around planters setup on Farm Journal College TV. Plus,
I'm Charles Denny. Here in the dead of winter, it's easy to see your mood take a dip. But what might help? Surrounding yourself with indoor beauty. That story coming up on AgDay.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy-duty pickups.
in AgriBusiness, another mixed day for markets as March cotton futures traded $3 higher during the day. So how did other markets fare ahead of USDA's first 2018 report? For that, we head to the floor of the CME in Chicago.
It's been kind of a dead market here in corn, not just today, but as of late, just hovering right around that 350 level. We've been talking about this being a big magnet. I didn't think it's going to be so until we get that new news coming across the wires. If we get a friendly report, perhaps we see some short covering accelerate this market towards 360. Bearish report, I think, breaks down to new contract lows and tests that 335 level. Now, as far as the soybeans are concerned, we're testing this 950 psychologically significant level. I think there's upside to this market. We know that funds have a very large net short position, the shortest they've been since about June and July when we bottomed. So again, if we get a friendly report, I wouldn't be surprised to see short covering from funds accelerate prices a little bit higher. 985 would be the target. This represents that 50 and 100-day moving average, as well as a 50% retracement from those June lows to July highs. Now, if we get a bearish report, look for the breakdown to 937. This has been Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
Tyne Morgan has more on what to expect from USDA later today.
Here now is Steve Georgie of Allendale. Steve, we have this big USDA report coming out. Soybeans, definitely, we've heard a lot of farmers say it was a good crop, but it definitely wasn't my best crop.
Right.
Do you think that could show up in this report on Friday?
I think it will. But in what way and how much will USDA change? A lot of time with beans, you see USDA kick the can. And so when you talk about the size of the crop and we talk yields, there might be a slight reduction out of yield. But the bigger issue for soybeans will be exports. We know how far behind in exports we are. When you look at export sales by themselves, we're 15% behind the 5-year average. Not even the record pace that USDA has us on. We're 15% behind the 5-year average. So as our research guys put together, what does that mean? When you calculate that out, if we keep the same pace we're on right now, I don't even like saying it, but it could be somewhere close to 300 million bushel. I don't believe that'll be what it'll end up being on this report. But my point of saying that is that there will have to be some adjustments on this report, and prepare yourself for something.
But we know the trade's been watching. We know the trade knows that our exports are behind. So how big of a reduction do you think we need to see in order for it to create a negative reaction in Chicago? And that's a great question. When we look at what happened a year ago, right? We went from 480 million carry out for beans down to 420. So they cut 60 million bushels on this report, and we saw the market react quite a bit higher in a very fast
time period.
Yeah.
You've got guys expecting we may do something like that, but this report may be a little different. I don't know if we're going to get that friendly twist like we saw last year. It may be a little bit more of a negative twist, so be careful on prices right now. If you need to look at protecting beans, if you've got beans out there, look at finding a way to do that. Look at finding a way to do that with leaving the upside open in case we get that rally like we had a year ago.
All right, be prepared. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. All right, we need to take a quick break, and then we'll have a check of the weather.
To talk to Steve Georgie one-on-one, call Allendale Incorporated at 800-262-7538 or head online to allendale-inc.com. AgDay, brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential.
Welcome back to AgDay. Your meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, as we look at this drought monitor, we talked about it earlier in the show, continues to expand across the kind of the plain states and west.
I know, and that is a concern, but it's kind of one of those things that happens in a La Nina year, so something that we'll have to watch as we head towards spring. Because this map is definitely starting to show a lot of color from coast to coast. It's gotten a little bit better, parts of Montana. It's still pretty dry up there in the northern plains, but it has gotten better than it was a few months ago, but it's definitely gotten worse from the southwest into the southeast. Going back just 4 weeks, you can see how much less orange there was. We were already starting to see a lot of yellow there in the western plains, eastern New Mexico, eastern Colorado, and in the southeast. But then as we've gone through the last 4 weeks, you can just see that expansion of the oranges and reds, especially just in the last couple of weeks here across the southern plains and parts of the southeast as well. So something we have to watch as we head toward the growing season. Here's the way things shape up then this morning. Pretty wet system from Mississippi and Alabama all the way into the northeast. Another one kind of diving through the upper portions of the Rockies, but that's going to be weakening, diving across the plain states. Putting the maps into motion, you can see the snow from northern Mississippi all the way into parts of Indiana, much of Ohio, and into the eastern Great Lakes. There's going to be a little bit of sleet and freezing rain in between the rain and snow as well. Showers and maybe even thunder showers for parts of the southeast into Florida later on today. That will all move east, though. Storm system will still be putting down snow from West Virginia into northern Maine, although again that could be a little bit of an icy mix there. Weakening system diving through the central Mississippi Valley, kind of falls apart completely. A little bit of lake effect behind the system, but not like we've seen during the holidays and into the first part of January. Another system producing just a bit of snow for the northern Rockies late in the day tomorrow. There's the precipitation estimate past 24 hours. Pretty nice amounts from Louisiana all the way into Indiana, as you can see. Adding in the next 36 hours, we'll add some more in a lot of the area from the mid-Atlantic all the way into the northeast. Some areas end up with 2 to 3 inches of liquid equivalent. That's either melted snow or plain old rain, and some decent amounts in some of the especially higher elevations in the northwest. Snowfall amounts, generally the northern Rockies and also that first system in the western lakes, but the most that we're going to add is with that storm system from the Ohio Valley into the northeast. High temperatures today, very cold in the northern plains. It's cooling down in the Southland as well. 34 in New Orleans tomorrow morning. Then you can see highs tomorrow only in the teens, even some low below zero numbers in the far northern plains. All because of this trough that digs in. One piece of it comes in this weekend, another piece for Monday and Tuesday. That hangs around for part of next week, but then we start to go zonal again. That'll warm things up once again. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We'll head to Redding, California. First of all, clouds, then some sunshine, high of 62 degrees. Kearney, Nebraska, cloudy, just a bit of snow, higher only 15. And Frankfort, Kentucky, colder with rain turning over to snow, high of 48 and falling.
It's never too early to talk about setting up the planter. We'll do that next on Farm Journal College TV with Missy Bauer and see how you can brighten the gloomy winter days later on in the country.
AgDay, brought to you by Credenz soybean seed from Bayer, designed using smart genetics with tailored varieties to fit any field condition. The Farm Journal College Report is brought to you by Instinct and N-Serve nitrogen stabilizers. They don't just stabilize nitrogen, they maximize it, so crops deliver the max in return. Learn more at maxinmaxout.com.
A profitable year starts with the planter. This morning, we continue our conversation about proper setup with Missy Bauer on Farm Journal College TV. Once we make these decisions, the next thing is we got to get out in the field and make sure we're set up out in the field before we even get going, right?
You bet. So when we head to the field, there's certain things that we got to do in every field we go to. There's certain things we just got to get done once a year and make sure it's good. One of the first things that we do the first day we head to the field with the planter is going to be check the planter levelness.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I want to take a small magnetic level, put it on the main toolbar here, and then what we'll do is actually drop the planter in the ground and actually start going and then walk alongside it.
Okay.
I want this main toolbar on the planter to be running level.
All right.
If my bubble's in the front or in the back, I'm making adjustments up here on the hitch. I'm going to bring my hitch height up or down to get this main toolbar level.
Right.
Once you know where that main levelness comes from, in this case it's a 3-point hitch planter, you know that setting for all year then. So it's just something we got to do that first day, know where that setting's at.
Right.
If we got a drawbar hitch planter, it's a little bit more difficult because you're not making that adjustment from the cab. We're going to be maybe putting spacers or washers above the drawbar to raise that up or adjust the position of the hitch itself.
Okay.
So depending on your type, it might take a little bit more time, but that's something you got to do that first day you head out.
All right. And then once we're running, we fire all this machinery up. Then we got to go and make sure everything's right behind.
Right. We'll start evaluating at that point things like planting depth, down pressure, and ensure our closing wheels are closing properly.
All right. Are you feeling the blues of winter? Next, find out how some green can help improve your spirits in the country. Next.
AgDay, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields. In the country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit Kubota.com today.
A dip in your mood is common in winter when shorter amounts of sunlight can sometimes affect us emotionally. While not a cure for serious mental health issues, UT experts say indoor plants can beautify your surroundings and perhaps improve your outlook. In this report provided by the University of Tennessee, Charles Denny tells us about the evidence for growing self-care.
The view, dreary. In winter, the days are short and often cold, not a good mix for someone's mood. Seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, is where a lack of sunlight can bring about a decrease in mood or even depression. Things might look bleak outside, but here's something that can help: indoor plants. Much like a beautiful painting, just viewing or working with nature's artwork is good for us.
You know, and again, there's been studies that have found that, how you can increase your self-esteem, feel better about yourself, you're nurturing, caring for something, and in a short amount of time, you can really see the positive results.
Dr. Sue Hamilton says indoor plants cleanse the air we breathe and our psyche. Year-round gardening, especially in December, January, and February, has a therapeutic impact in several ways.
Research shows that you have a reduction in blood pressure, heart rate, a reduction in stress hormone levels, and then an increase in mood.
We don't mean to suggest plants are a cure-all for everything. If you're suffering emotionally, please see a doctor or mental health professional. But there's no question that being surrounded by beauty can help your mood. Margot Emery is the editor of a magazine for the UT Institute of Agriculture. Her office includes lots of plants. Margot says beauty gives her a boost in mood and creativity, much like being in a greenhouse.
Yeah, and they are plants that I collect particularly, so I have them here and at home, and a lot of them are from my friends, and so when I'm watering them and caring for them, I'm thinking about the friends who gave them to me.
The rebirth of spring, with all its color, is still a ways off. We might be stuck in the dead of winter a while longer, but our mood doesn't necessarily have to be dormant. Plants may help. Why look at this when you can look at this? This is Charles Denny reporting.
Thanks, Charles. UT's gardening experts say while the air in your home becomes dry when we have the heat on, it's still important not to overwater plants. Many plant varieties grow well in low light and require less water indoors than they would in sunlight. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in, started your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy-duty pickups.